genuinely don't know what I read. Welcome to one of the most anticipated reviews of my channel, Republic Commando True Colors. And yes, I have the rare Republic Commando Volume 2, which collects True Colors and Order 66. This was a special from Sci-Fi Book Club and was very limited printing. It had a limited print run. This is more fascinating than actually reading True Colors, because True Colors is something I don't know what I witnessed, but I know it took me 5 attempts, I should say, 5 attempts to actually finish this book. I have been reading this book for a year, and I mean that. So let's give a little background. Years and years ago, I made a review for Republic Commando Hard Contact by Karen Travis, a book I liked quite a bit. And the review blew up. As it stands now, I think it is my most watched video of all time, which I'm flattered. I'm flattered people, after all these years, it's probably pushing over a decade, since I read Hard Contact, they still love that review, and I find it very flattering. A few years after that, I reviewed 000, a book that had some good stuff in it, but for the most part was not a good book, and people hated me for it. People extremely disagreed with me, threw me under the bus, called me names, and here's the thing. Karen Travis fans are a strange breed. I'm not saying they're bad, because God forbid I make fun of a fan base. I mean, we all saw what happened when I made fun of the Ahsoka fans. So I don't make fun of fans anymore, although Karen Travis's fans are a vocal collective. And honestly, I don't know why they are fans of hers. I have a theory, and I'll get to that in a bit, but just bear with me. True Colors is a book that is a soapbox. It is a soapbox for Karen Travis to complain about whatever she feels like complaining about on the day she's writing. What do I mean by this? Well, what is True Colors about? It's about our going after a rogue Kaminoan scientist named Kosai, who may be able to help stop the accelerated aging of the clones. That is the main plot, but it's not what most of the characters are actually doing for this book. So, I should say, Delta Squad is going after Kosai on Palpatine's orders. Scarada, Val, and Ordo and Muriel, although Ordo ends up doing other things in this book that are not important. They are also going after Kosai for their own personal reasons to stop the de-aging. For Delta, it's not... They talk about it, what it could be, briefly. Delta, it's just Palpatine wants it, because Palpatine wants Kosai to do cloning. I'm assuming Karen Travis is trying to reference Dark Empire, but it's very vague. Other EU things are referenced in this, so that isn't a far stretch. But Palpatine wants clones for the sake of... wants Kosai for the sake of wanting her. There's also a subplot that doesn't really go anywhere of... There's cloning happening. The Republic's doing cloning on one of the moons off of Coruscant, or like a planet near Coruscant, which amounts to nothing in this book. Etain has been exiled to the planet from Hard Contact to remove the farmers because the Separatists are invading. And then it backfires. She's also pregnant with Darman's child. Omega Squad is sent on the most unimportant plot line for your protagonists, because this is Omega Squad's book, right? Omega, Darman, Fee, Aten, and Niner, they were the protagonists along with Attain of Hard Contact. But with 000, we introduced Delta Squad because Delta Squad had the Republic Commando game. You got Scarada, you got Val. Things got complicated. We got Jusig, which Jusig is just Scarada's puppet to slow Delta Squad down, and that's it. That's all he is good for. But here's the thing. I say they're going after Kosai. Really, well, the book opens with a bank heist. Val and Delta Squad break into a bank on Maigito, which nearly kills Val. He ends up getting left behind. They're stealing his family fortune, which is then given to Scarada, which doesn't serve too much of a point other than Scarada is like able to just waste it on just ships that they abandon places. It's just bizarre. But what's just really, really bizarre in this book is Omega's mission in this. They make a big deal of they're going after, it's basically, so this book is not important by itself. That's what I have to get at. What it feels like is it's one part setup for what Karen Traviss wants to do in future books, whether that be Republic Commando or what have you. Spoilers, some of this is dealt with in Order 66. It's just a continuing plot line. But the other thing is Karen Traviss this is the point where she seems to have lost her mind. So not everyone was a fan of Karen Traviss, especially when it came to Legacy of the Force and the Mandalorians. And if you didn't agree with Karen Traviss, because Karen Traviss was very vocal back in the day on the forums, she called you a Talifan. This is when that started happening, because my God, is she out of control with her bizarre, and I mean bizarre, trying to tie things to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that were going on at the time. There's a whole thing about the 24-hour news cycle making you angry and afraid with the HoloNet, and it's just an allegory for like Fox News and CNN. Like, really? Do we really need that? Attain and Ordo get in an argument about which one of them is more oppressed, which is one of the most embarrassing sets of dialogue like I've ever read. Also, Ordo has like a hot blonde girlfriend who works for the Treasury that was a minor character in the last book. She's bumped up to main character status because she's trying to figure out where the clones go if they're injured too badly to go back into combat. And we kind of get that slightly resolved in this, but not really. Nothing's really resolved. Even the Kosai thing, the Kosai thing gets resolved. It's not satisfying. Nothing else gets really resolved. But like, here's the thing, like, Omega's plotline solely exists so that Fee could get caught in an explosion and end up brain dead, or like really severely injured in the second half of the book. That happens. Spoilers. I mean, I don't care. I don't care at all with this book, because quite frankly, no one should read this. I'm being very serious here because I could see why people would like 000 for its tactical action. And this is something I was talking to the Revenist, my buddy Marcel, is that like with Hard Contact and 000 and Clone Wars No Prisoners, that TCW tie-in that Karen Travis wrote, all three of those have like one thing in common that Karen Travis does really, really well, and that is tactical, like realistic Star Wars tactical combat. The gunplay, well, I should say blaster play in this, it they use modern military tactics, and that was really fascinating each time, and it was quite frankly very enjoyable to read. That all the action in this sucks. Like there's barely any action period. Um there's a couple like there's no big action set pieces like in the previous two books. This book ends on a whimper. Like nothing happens. Like there's a big fight, I guess, at the very beginning with Delta Squad and Val against some, I think they were immunalists, like moons and droids. Just the only time you see battle droids in the whole freaking book. This is a Clone Wars multimedia project book, and it has no battle droids. In fact, there's barely any separatists. Um, there's, it's just soapbox, like Karen Travis getting on her soapbox, which, my god, I gotta get into this too. I know this review's rambly. She can't write women. She can't. It's the strangest thing. They solely exist to be soapbox characters. There's no other purpose for Ordo's girlfriend other than she does cause a hostage crisis near the end of the book, but I won't spoil that. If you are gonna read this, that's something that's a truly baffling scene of cringe, because this book is just cringe. It's so cringe. Um, but yeah, Omega's plotline has no point. Which Delta Squad's the only group that's actually doing stuff you would think would be in a Republic Commando book. Omega, they come across a deserter ARC trooper who ends up. They find out that the Republic sends like specialty clones out to kill deserters, which is really, it's something that has never been brought up before and not been brought up since. But you know, Karen Travis is obsessed with the clones are slaves. You know, she's the only author that thinks this, by the way, which you'd think that this would be like a big plot point in everything Clone Wars related, but it's not. And like, I think it's because she writes it so badly, no one else wants to touch it. It's just it's ghastly. Her writing and her like crazy diatribes and like just the fact that this book just meanders from plot point to plot point and then just ends. I guess the point is this is it has kind of sort of a happy enough ending. They're still lying to one another because there's a whole thing with Darman doesn't know that Attain's pregnant and that the baby's his, because Scarada is the worst character. And I gotta bring this up because this is the problem with this, and I'm assuming the next two books, because I highly doubt she's gonna kill off Scarada, because that's her become the protagonist of this book, although he doesn't undergo a change. But he does the most. Scarada is kind of deplorable. He's not kind of, he is deplorable. he just like controls everyone and uses them and like is an overall asshole to every, like, I mean, not to his boys, as he call them, the Knolls and the Commandos, but he's an asshole to everyone else. And I don't like him. I don't like he's it's like the best way I can describe Scarada is he's just Garth Ennis's take on Nick Fury, but written really badly and without being cool. Because Scarada's not cool. I don't care what people say. He's not cool. He's cringy. He, I mean, he's the reason I don't like Mandalorians. He's pro torture. Um, he just likes usurping everyone. He's just, I don't get it. And like everyone like blindly follows him, and I don't understand. Well, I mean, I get why Attain follows him because she's the dumbest Jedi of Yoda's Jedi Order. I get that because she's stupid. But I don't get why Jusik follows him, other than he's got a boner for being a Mandalorian. Not for boning Mandalorians, just for being one. Jusik, oh my god. He he doesn't do barely anything in this book except for near the end, and then that was truly baffling. That was Karen Traviss wanted to shove more things in the book without actually ending it because it's just weird. It's just a bad book. I can't describe it any clearer than that. It's a bad, drawn out, tedious, way too many characters, way too many plot lines that are ultimately useless book. It The worst part of this book is that Karen Traviss decided that being on a soapbox and like just being like having to be like the cool author that is always right and everyone else is wrong, um which does get it more into the next book. There's like a big baffling thing in that, but we won't get there today. But it's just like she cared more about her politics, her ideas, like what she wanted over what worked in Hard Contact. You know what worked in Hard Contact? It was a simplistic story with almost perfectly written military action. It was small scale because the Commandos, they're covert ops. They're going to deal with small scale things. And then the second book, it's a bigger deal because terrorists in Coruscant, and the Commandos have to stop it without letting the public know what's going on. In this, we're going after a Kaminoan scientist. Okay. But then there's like 10,000 other things going on. And none of them are like worth writing about. I don't get it. I don't get why people like this. Like, I don't get it. I tried to go in with an open mind, but it's just one of the most baffling things. And it leads me to a point I made earlier that I was going to get back to. Karen Traviss has fans because of Hard Contact, because of like No Prisoners, and I think that's it. Like, I think most of the people that really like Karen Traviss only read Hard Contact. They may have read 000 and thought it was okay, or they loved those books so much that they would just accept anything that had those characters in them afterwards. Because this is objectively horrible. This is the third worst expanded universe book I think I've ever read. It beats out Wild Space barely. It's just that slightly worse than Wild Space. But Stealth and Siege will always be number 1 and 2. I will say Siege is number 1, Stealth's number 2, because Stealth resembles a book. Siege resembles me just wanting to tear my ears off and flush them down a toilet so I didn't have to listen to the audiobook anymore. Like, it's just, oh my god, this is so bad. And I've read a lot of bad books for this channel. I've never read anything quite like True Colors. It is truly a prototype for how modern virtue signaling authors write. It doesn't get all the hallmarks of like this ultra left wing politics, the gender diversity, the racial diversity. Like those things are not there. But the virtue signaling, like being on the soapbox all the time, having characters that are irredeemably assholish, but it's okay because the author thinks they're cool. I genuinely think Karen Traviss thinks that Cal Skirata is the coolest character in all of Star Wars. I genuinely believe that she thinks that. He's not. He may be one of the worst characters she's ever written. At least at this point, I have not read everything she's written, of course. There's a couple things I have not read. But I can say, out of all the things I've read, Cal Skirata is the worst character of her characters. By far. And then one last point before I give like my rating. The EU connections, because it's very clear Karen Traviss did some research in earlier books on EU, but like by this book, she would just, it seems like she would look up things on Wikipedia. She would not read them. She would not read the actual source material, which is, it's not the end of the world. Most authors, I don't think, actually read the EU, except for like people like Lucino and Stover would, and you can tell in their books that they're well versed in the Star Wars universe. Most authors aren't like that. Hell, I can honestly say Zahn couldn't even get his continuity down half the time. It was just, especially when he got so removed from his own books. Like when he would just come back and be like, I want to write this book. And then they just let him. Like, so it's not the end of the world if you don't read Expanded Universe stuff. But you should have a general knowledge of stuff, especially what's going on in other books that are happening right around your time. Because here's the thing. Clone Wars, and this is even before TCW, it was really full. It was a really full part of the timeline. So you have to be really careful when you write things. And her EU references are just kind of weird and not done correctly. So she has Pelion. Pelion is referenced a few times in this book, and then we get like a quote from him at the beginning of one of the chapters, and that's fine. But there's like a weird. Well, there's also a KOTOR comics reference to Demogol. But it's not. I don't. She references, she says in there that he experimented on children because they compare Kosai to Demogol, which Demogol, from what I remember, and I read KOTOR, all those comics recently, I never saw a single child being experimented on during Flashpoint. I never saw that. He experimented on Jedi, but she's not gonna say that because she hates Jedi, and that's a whole nother thing. Is the Jedi hate's been turned up to the nth degree in this, and the Jedi are stupid and they're just the worst and they kidnap babies and blah blah blah. I'm like, I don't care anymore about how much you hate prequel era Jedi. Well, all Jedi, but especially Yoda's Jedi Order. I don't care. Why are you even writing Star Wars unless you want money or you want to preach because people will just eat up your stuff because it says Repel Commando on it. But the one that really got me, and I'd have to do more research. So there was a one-off issue of Star Wars Republic that was it was an Ayla Sakura issue with her clone commander Bly. And there's like kind of a connection between the two of them, but it's not stated that like they have like a sexual desire for one another, but like they care about one another. It's interesting. The big thing with that issue, it's the first time we see Phase 2 clone armor, canonically. That was the first time they unveiled what it looks like. Um, in True Colors, there's an offhand comment that Ayla Sakura is too is romantically attached to Clone Commander Bly. What? I I don't get her deal with clones and Jedi hooking up. Like I get that the clones are like getting into like I mean they're in their 20s, but they're technically in their teens, but like why are Jedi wanting to bone clones? I don't get it. Like Etain and Darman was one thing because Etain, like I said, is the dumbest Jedi of Yoda's Jedi Order, and she made a very very poor decision and decided to get pregnant and like made sure that she would be pregnant. Oh, that's another thing. She tries speeding up her pregnancy with the Force. That's a plot line, and then she nearly dies. She nearly miscarries the baby. It's just ridiculous. I didn't even know that was a Force power. You'd think like people would do that in Luke's Jedi Order since they can have children. I don't know. It's just weird. It's just a weird thing. I don't get it. Overall, though, I could talk about True Colors and how bad it is all day, but what do I rank this? I give it a 1 out of 5. It honestly barely gets that 1 star. I really wanted to give this a 0, but it is a book. It is a Star Wars book, and it does kind of have a plot. And not everything is horrible in it, just 99% of it is. Um, it's just weird. It's just a weird book. I don't know when I'll get to Order 66 at this rate because I'm kind of scarred, quite frankly, from this experience. So, anyway, have a nice day.